We're gonna be exploring the deepest depths of creepy video game Easter eggs and other secrets. Bonus points if you're watching this at night, in complete and total darkness. This Iceberg video starts up here, with the more well-known and less creepy entries. Then we head all the way down to the more obscure, terrifying ones. This list is compiled from various other icebergs and my own research, so I guarantee there's something on here you haven't seen yet. By the way, take note of these two symbols that will pop up before either a major story spoiler or a jump scare entry. With that out of the way, let's get started right at the top. Hex Maniac Ghost. In Pokemon X and Y, when you enter Lemoy City's Fighting Dojo building and take the elevator up to the second floor, you get this cutscene of a ghost girl appearing behind you. She then slides off and says that you're not the one before disappearing without a trace. She can't be found anywhere else on the floor or the rest of the building. Ever since this first happened in 2013, fans have been left wondering what the meaning of this encounter was. As the mystery grew, so did Hex Maniac's popularity. So much so that I'm not even sure I could show you what pops up for her in Google Images. In the same city of that encounter, at the Hotel Richesheim's 4th floor, there's another Hex Maniac. When you talk to her, she tells you not to speak to her so she could hear the elevator. Unlike the other one though, she doesn't disappear. She shows up again in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire at the Mount Pyre graveyard, once again telling you that you're not the one. But this Hex Maniac also doesn't disappear afterwards. She has more appearances throughout the games, but that doesn't mean they're all the same one, as Pokemon reuses models for each type of trainer. Years later, we're no closer to figuring out the bigger story here of this particular Hex Maniac ghost, if there is one. There are also other mysterious ghost sightings in the game, but we'll get to those later. Ratman Dens. In both Portal and Portal 2, as you're making your way past all the puzzles, you can find these hidden away dens that look like someone's been living in them. That someone is Doug Ratman, who was the only survivor of an employee neurotoxin attack from GLaDOS, one of the artificial intelligence antagonists of the games. Although you never see Ratman when you're playing, he leaves behind paintings and scribbles to document his struggle against both his schizophrenia and GLaDOS's pursuit of him. Golden Freddy. In the first Five Nights at Freddy's, there's a 1 in 32.7 thousand chance that when checking Cam 2B, the Freddy poster on the wall becomes a Golden Freddy face. Once back at the office, Golden Freddy will be there alongside flashes of Freddy and "It's me." If you stare at him for too long, his face fills up the screen, and unlike other deaths, this one causes the game to close out. And in Custom Night mode, when inputting the difficulty levels to 1987, the year of the infamous bite, Golden Freddy's face shows up before force exiting the game. Resident Evil 4 Lake Jump Scare. Going up the lake area and shooting at the water causes the giant mutant salamander Del Lago to come up and eat Leon. The 2023 remake also keeps this jump scare. Assassin's Creed Squid. As you explore the Visitazione Assassin tomb, you flip a switch, and if you stand at this spot to stare at the water for a while, a giant squid swims by. If you flip the switch again and wait, it'll come back and put a tentacle out of the water. This wouldn't be the last time a giant squid would appear in the series. In Assassin's Creed 4 Black Flag, if you dive at the coordinates 630-650 and make your way to this sunken ship to look through the window, you get to see a giant squid taking down a whale. World of Warcraft Kraken. If you're north of the Voldun area, swimming down takes you to a sunken ship. Below that is the writhing Leviathan, a Kraken. You can swim up to it to get a closer look, and if you use the abysmal horn that's found on the sunken ship, it'll react by moving its tentacles around. Sims Kraken. In The Sims 3 Island Paradise, if you stay in a boat long enough on a deep ocean world, there's a 4% chance that a Kraken will swim by and a 1% chance that it'll attack the sim. That chance gets an extra 1% if it's already swum by the boat. There's actually a lifetime reward called Friend of the Kraken that can be unlocked with 30,000 lifetime happiness points. It makes it so that a Kraken will never attack a boat you're on, and it allows you to command it to attack other boats. Witcher 3 Whales. When you're out sailing in Skellig Sea or doing some diving, the waters themselves can seem pretty much empty. That's why it can be quite a shock when you find a giant whale coming up beside you. Heart of Liberty City. In Grand Theft Auto 4, there's a secret hidden inside the Happiness Island statue. It's not an easy one to get to though. After getting a helicopter, you have to get close enough to the balcony where you have to time it right so you can safely jump off. Next to the entrance, there are signs that say, "No hidden content this way." Once inside, you could go up a ladder and see a big beating heart at the top. It doesn't react to any weapon, and the only way to get out is either by reloading a save file or by an explosive death. Team Fortress 2 Ghost Room. In the Halloween event Harvest map, there is a small room underneath it all. In it is a single ghost. As odd as this may be, it's actually a functional part of the map as it serves as the spawn room for the ghosts before it's needed up above. Witcher 3 statues. If you go to the graveyard in Lindenvale, you see a mausoleum with 2 winged stone statues standing beside the entrance. Once you go inside and come out, those statues have moved. If you turn your back on them, they'll move again to get closer to you. This is a reference to Doctor Who's Weeping Angels, who also only move when they aren't being looked at. Skyrim statues. Once you enter Sovngarde, you're met with these giant statues. As you walk down the path, they slowly rotate in place to face you. What adds to the creep factor here is that Sovngarde is a place of death. It's essentially the equivalent of Valhalla, where soldiers who died in combat arrive to be rewarded with a pleasant afterlife. Dead by Daylight statues. On the Sanctum of Wrath map, the statues around the center will always stare at you. Whenever you move the camera away from them and then look back, all of them are looking right at you. By the way, it'd be really cool if you followed me on Twitch. I stream DBD and other spooky games every Monday and Friday at 7 PM Central. So stop on by if you ever want to play with us or just to talk. Thanks, I really appreciate it. Looking forward to seeing you there. Far Cry 5 balloons. On the map, there are multiple red balloons. This is a reference to Pennywise the Clown. If you go through O'Hara's haunted house, you end up in this room with a red balloon and a note called Clown Thoughts. There's also a ringing phone, and if you answer it, here's what you hear. Red Dead Redemption Tumbleweed. The town of Tumbleweed used to be a thriving community that has since been abandoned. When exploring the area, you could hear a dog barking, but they're nowhere to be found. If you go into the church, you find some writing on a pedestal. The devil has got into that beast. And if you go into the mansion, players have reported hearing footsteps and voices along with doors being slammed shut. A newspaper in the game does claim that the mansion is haunted, but it seems that this wasn't the intended experience from the developers. That message in the church, that was for a scrap cheat code. The mysterious mansion encounters can be chalked up to an NPC spawning glitch, since there's an inaccessible room where bandits are supposed to spawn later for a special encounter in the town. As a result of this glitch, it left players wondering what exactly was going on in the town, and that was fueled by low-resolution fakes passed off as proof of spiritual activity. Hitman Hotel Ghosts. In Hitman contracts, during the traditions of the trade mission, if you unlock a door with a hotel wing closed sign, you'll find a dark corridor. If you go to the bathroom and look at any of the mirrors there, a ghost will appear behind you, and if you explore some more, you can find a murder scene and the ghost out in the hallway. Now, that's fairly spooky, but when you're Agent 47, this is nothing. That's why you could actually use fiber wire to take out the ghost. And on top of that, you could drag it around, and if police see you, they'll react the same way as if it was a normal corpse. GTA 5 Infinity Killer. There are various clues around that allude to a serial killer's work. The Infinity Killer, their name given due to their obsession with that symbol and the number 8, has killed 8 joggers 14 years before the events of the game. He then hid their bodies around San Andreas and was eventually caught soon after his last. Although he never shows up in the game, you're able to find the locations of all 8 bodies based on the clues he left behind. However, there's still a good chunk left to the details of these murders that fans have been speculating over ever since. GTA 5 UFOs. There are multiple UFOs that can be found around in the sky, and even one that sunk into the ocean. But the most notable is the one that you could see when you complete 100% of the game. At the top of Mount Chiliad, there's some writing that says, "Come back when your story is complete." Once it is, and it's 3 AM and raining, a bright and active UFO pops up. It doesn't take any damage, and it'll fade out when you get too close. Halo 3 Cavemen. On the Sierra 117 level, you could find multiple cavemen creatures around in the distance. You could even climb up some rocks to see a whole family of them. But this isn't the last you see of them in the franchise. At the end of Halo 3 ODST, if you move the camera to the left, you can see one sitting there. As for how these creatures came to be, apparently they're supposed to resemble Marcus R. Leto, the co-creator of Halo. And the idea for these came from an email prank where employees would Photoshop his face on a female gorilla, dubbing it the Goriletto. Half-Life 2 G-Man sightings. Throughout the game, if you pay enough attention, you could actually spot the mysterious G-Man observing you at various points. If you spot him, he leaves soon after and disappears. He's responsible for your character being involved in the events of the story as he uses you to his benefit, so it makes sense that he's keeping tabs on you. PT Lisa. In the horror game demo, the majority of the game takes place in a hallway where you're being haunted by Lisa the ghost. This is a claustrophobic enough environment, and part of the experience is seeing flickers on the screen, causing you to think someone is behind you. But when you turn around, no one's there. Or is there? In 2019, a fan was able to get into the inner mechanics of the game and found out that once you get the flashlight, Lisa spawns in right behind you. That's what causes those weird shadows and what makes her breathing more noticeable. But she disappears as soon as you turn around. Pokemon Ghost People. We talked about the most famous instance of a ghost person earlier, but there's a lot more throughout the series. Here are some general ones. In Diamond and Pearl, if you go inside the old chateau, you'll end up in a bedroom and see a girl appear in another room. She'll leave and won't be able to be found anywhere. Also, in the room is a framed picture with glowing red eyes that follow you if you go to the other bedrooms. There's also a butler that disappears once you see him. Then there's Route 217. If you go inside of this house, a woman will give you a spell tag, which is an item that boosts the power of ghost type moves. If you leave and go back inside, she's disappeared. In the demo version of Sun and Moon, you could talk to this girl at the marina. She tells you that she's sailing away in 24 days and that she's nervous. If you tell her that you'll be there to see her off and are actually there 24 real-life days later, she talks about finally seeing her parents again, and as she walks off, she disappears. In Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, a kid tells you that ghosts have been appearing at the trainer school. When you go there at night, there's a kid with a Drifloon. She talks to you about how scared she is of the rumors going around, and she asks you to investigate them. As you do that, you'll experience spookier and spookier encounters, all leading to this classroom. If you talk to the kids, they give you strange responses. Once you speak to the teacher and ask her who she is, this happens. You were just experiencing illusions from Hypno's psychic powers. When you go outside to speak to the girl again, a security guard shows up. You look away from her, and when you turn to face her again, she and her Drifloon are gone. And the guard notes that you were the only person here. It's worth noting also that Drifloon is a ghost type Pokemon that's known for kidnapping children. There are more ghost people entries, but I'm saving them for later based on how creepy their stories are. Life is Strange Warren Stalking. In episode 2, when you wake up and are exploring the room, it's pretty easy to miss this. If you look outside, you could see someone looking at your window. That's Warren, who has a crush on your character. For further context, he's waiting out there to ask you out to the movies once you leave your dorm. However, fans of the game have mixed opinions on him and his crush on you, so if they already feel like Warren is a bit obsessive and creepy, seeing him out there probably doesn't help his case. The Sims prank calls. In The Sims 1, you will occasionally get these phone calls that don't really make sense. Nothing comes out of them as they're just pranks, but it's easy to get thrown off guard the first time you get one of the more threatening ones, especially at night. 1313 21 Sheik Street. In The Sims 4, the 1313 21 Sheik Street apartment is surprisingly very cheap for the area, but if you remove the living room carpet, you can see why that is, as a body chalk outline has been left on the floor. GTA San Andreas Mass Grave. If you head to the north side of the Bone County Desert, you'll find an abandoned car. Getting closer to it reveals a pit full of what appear to be body bags. This doesn't seem to have any other connections with the rest of the game, but rather they're a nod to how the mob would dispose of bodies in the desert. GTA 5 Alien. During the prologue mission, if you turn right towards the first bridge you see and go under it, you'll see a xenomorph-like creature under the ice. You'll actually see them later a few times since they appear on a movie set, and Michael also hallucinates that he's getting probed by them on a spaceship. GTA 5 Mount Gordo Ghost. If you're around this particular campsite on Mount Gordo between 11 PM and midnight, you'll hear some strange noises as if someone was talking or screaming. If you look up the mountain, you'll see this sliver of light at the edge. If you go up closer to it, you see a 2D ghost woman with Jock spelled out in blood where she stood. This is the ghost of Jolene Cranley Evans, who was murdered by her husband Jock Cranley. They were fighting over if they should stay or leave the county. Jack wanted to leave so that he could pursue his dream of being a stuntman. Jolene wanted to stay to look after her parents and their successful guest house. During an argument, Jock threw her over the cliff, damning her spirit to this spot. Although he was arrested, he was released as the police concluded that her death was an accident. World of Warcraft Goldshire Children. If you're in Goldshire at around the server's 7:30 AM mark, you could see this group of children walking around. What makes them interesting is their formation. No matter what, they will always come together and walk in this shape. This is in reference to The Children of the Corn by Stephen King, which is about a cult of children that worship a demon. If you follow them into this building and wait around, you'll eventually hear a voice tell you that
you will die.
There are also other lines of dialogue similar to this, and you sometimes might even out of nowhere hear this. Witcher 3 Ghost Ship. If you sail off towards the Skellig Isles between 1 AM and 3 AM, you'll see a ghost ship flying. It'll eventually sink down into the water and disappear. Dead by Daylight Sadako. If you have Sadako selected and you stay idle long enough on the menu screen, she'll teleport to jump scare you. And that's not all. After buying the Sadako Rising DLC, if you play 7 days afterwards, instead of seeing the usual opening video when you boot the game up, you're met with this. This is a recreation of the video that's on Sadako's tape seen in the Ringo movie. Skyrim Headless Horseman. If you play between 10 PM and 4 AM, you could stumble upon a ghostly headless horseman riding around. He spawns randomly anywhere, he's not hostile, and he can't take any damage. If you follow him, he'll lead you to Hamvir's Rest, where you could fight some enemies and get some loot off of the area. It's not entirely clear what his story is, given that there's no quest tied to him, but that hasn't stopped fans from theorizing. Interestingly, there's a tomb and a displaced skull in the same graveyard that the Headless Horseman leads you to. Skyrim Mannequin Glitch. In the game, you can have mannequins in your home to show off your favorite outfits. However, a good chunk of players have encountered this unsettling glitch. Sometimes, the mannequins will move to face you as you walk around, as if they were actual people. But don't worry, it is possible to reset one when you change one of their options. Even though this isn't intentional and Bethesda has tried fixing this bug, it's still a really unnerving thing to happen in the comfort of your own home. Black Ops 3 Mannequins. If you go into a custom game on the Nuketown map and shoot the head off of every mannequin in less than 2 minutes, you'll hear a bell. and they'll all essentially act like zombies. They'll huddle up to you and can even kill you if you're not prepared. And that's not the only thing you could do with them. If you instead shoot off every single one of their arms, a bell will ring and they'll turn into weeping angels. They'll only move when you're looking away from them, and they could of course still damage and kill you. Halo 2 reversed audio. In the Mausoleum Suite song, there's a hidden message if it's played backwards.
I have walked among men and angels for 3,000 years. My time has no end, no beginning, no purpose. I wander the earth, seeking forgiveness for all my horrible crimes against God and man. I live to see death, destruction, over the light. But the light cannot be extinguished. I live in a prison of my own demise. I am lost in time.
This has led fans to speculate on who the speaker is, with many believing it to be 032 Mendicant Bias, a Forerunner defensive AI that got corrupted and turned against its creators, killing off most of the Forerunner species. Viscera Cleanup Detail Deer Head. On the House of Horror map, if you excessively clean this mounted deer head, it'll come alive and laugh. Afterwards, it'll look at your direction and laugh again a few times. This is a reference to Evil Dead 2, where a mounted deer head also comes back to life to have a good laugh. Fable 2 Winter Lodge. Once you open up the demon door in Bloodstone, you could get transported to this Winter Lodge area. Once you see the lodge itself, it's warm and cozy and very inviting, but once you get inside, the atmosphere takes a quick 180 turn as the building becomes dark and decrepit, full of skeletons and torture devices. Dying Light Teddy Bear. If you go to the kindergarten of Old Town, you'll see this pink teddy bear. If you continuously poke at it, it'll gradually be more and more annoyed.
I said I love you. Leave me alone. Don't touch me. Stop it. You asked for it.
It also, for some reason, leaves behind a stasis field projector, which is a sort of out-of-place science fiction item that causes enemies to levitate. BioShock Infinite Reverse Audio. Once you get the possession vigor, you'll hear some whispering, but nothing can be made out of it. That is, until you reverse the audio. These reverse lines are from Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, and are also heard whenever you use possession on enemies. This ties in with how the enemies behave at the end of their possession. They off themselves. Spoiler alert, but that's what Juliet does at the end of the play. Speaking of which, she dies by stabbing herself in the heart, as seen on the bottle of the vigor. GM Big City. On the very popular Gmod map, Big City, interacting with the Cafe Baltic door releases a scream while your character is pushed back. Portal Jellyfish. Towards the end of Portal 1, after the final test, there's a room off to the side, and when you go in there, you find this crude drawing on the office wall. It says, "The Big Bad Jellyfish. Wanted." This connects to another jellyfish drawing found on the same level, the Nice Little Jellyfish. It's speculated that these are supposed to be GLaDOS and were either drawn by Ratman or maybe even the children that were brought in on Bring Your Daughter to Work Day, which is the day that GLaDOS turned against the scientist and took over. Super Smash Bros. Melee Daisy's Eye. If you take a good look at Daisy's trophy, you'll see that she has a secret third eye on the back of her head. Yakuza 6 Spirit Photos. After finding a picture of a dead former acquaintance, you'll be able to capture their spirit in a photograph. There are many spirits at multiple locations that are able to be captured. Metal Gear Solid 4 Spirit Photos. After reaching Act 4 and being on Shadow Moses Island, there will be multiple opportunities to take photographs with your camera in specific spots. If you just so happen to take a picture at any of these locations, you'll catch a ghost on your camera. There are 30 in total, but if you collect just 5 of these pictures, you unlock an achievement. Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire Ghost Girl. When you go to fight Phoebe in the Elite Four, at the very last frame before the transition, there's a girl sitting on what was once an empty seat. The transition then goes to that girl's point of view as she gets up and walks towards them. Right afterwards, she's there next to both of them, but they don't react to her at all. According to fan speculation, based on other interactions, this is believed to be the spirit of Phoebe's grandmother, but as a kid. Dead Space Chapters. Your character's main motivation is to find his missing love interest, Nicole Brennan. Unfortunately, at the end of the game, you find out that she had died before you even started on your journey. If you take a look at the names of the game chapters all lined up, the first letters read out, Nicole is dead. Star Fox Out of This Dimension. When you're on the asteroid belt level of 3-2, destroying the second big asteroid on the right releases a giant bird. If you don't fight it and instead go through it, you'll be taken somewhere else. Communication is lost as General Pepper frantically tries to figure out where you went. Once the level loads in, you're met with what's essentially an acid trip. There's a boss with no health bar that uses a slot machine where you have to hit 777 to advance. Once that happens, the credits roll and you could shoot those too. After getting letters to spell out the end, the game will continuously throw enemies at you, and since no supply rings appear, you're left to die. Watch Dogs Legion Queen Victoria. In Watch Dogs Legion, during the Inside Albion mission, you go through catacombs and you'll find this statue of Queen Victoria. Whenever her line of sight with you is obstructed by the walls, she'll rotate around to where you'll next enter. On top of that, if you get close, you could hear a crying woman. For further context, these catacombs once held prisoners, where they were tortured and even executed. Visage Room 302. After beating the game, you can find a key that unlocks a safe. In that safe is a note telling you to go to room 302. Once you open the door, you'll find yourself in a recreation of the famous room 302 from Silent Hill 4. As the lights slowly start to go out, the suspense rises until... The Darkness phone calls. As you unlock phone numbers, you could then obviously call those numbers. There are a lot of joke ones.
Hey, I'm Roger's friend. Roger's answering machine is currently on vacation, so if you want to leave a message for it, leave it to me and I'll make sure he gets it so he can in turn give it to Roger.
Man, that was lame.
Oh, that was funny, man.
But every now and then, you'll get something more unsettling.
Mary, why did you leave me? I don't know what to do without you. I feel so lost. Please come back. I love you.
And there's also a Keeper of Secrets side character here that you accidentally call. He then gives you the task of finding and calling 18 secret phone numbers. And once you do that, he'll tell you his secret. That he has a bunch of stolen documents belonging to a secret society. But before he could reveal more to you...
And reveal the mind-boggling secret that Elvis was really the alien spawn of...
I couldn't find footage of this next part, but apparently, if you keep calling these secret numbers, you'll get a threatening, raspy voice telling you to stop calling them. But if you keep calling all of these, your character actually just dies on the spot. Arkham City Boat. Off of the industrial district, there's a seemingly unimportant boat floating around. On top is a hatch that can be hacked into. Once inside, you'll find a bunch of cockroaches and a creepy atmosphere. There's also a thug in the corner, but when you get too close to him, As you look around, you realize that this is actually Jonathan Crane's boat, aka Scarecrow. Although he doesn't make an appearance in the game, it seems that he's been keeping himself busy with his fear-inducing research. Super Mario Galaxy 2 Hell Valley Skytrees. In Shiverburn Galaxy, looking up at the top of the mountains reveals what appears to be 3 things looking down on you. Upon closer inspection, you could see just how mysteriously off-putting they look. Adding on to all of this is the fact that the mountain background in the game is named Beyond Hell Valley Sky, and these figures are under the name Hell Valley Sky Tree. Also, the figures themselves are about 30 times taller than Mario. As of now, they're almost just as mysterious as when they were first discovered, as they haven't really appeared anywhere else. That is, until more than a decade later in a minigame for WarioWare Get It Together. But they're a lot less imposing here. Hanging Luigi. In the original Luigi's Mansion, if you go to the telephone, there's a chance that a lightning strike outside could cause a really dark shadow glitch that makes it seem like Luigi is hanging from the ceiling.
Hello?
Romero's head. In Doom 2, when facing the final boss, if you no-clip into it, there's a head on a pike inside. It can't hurt you, but you could hurt it. When it dies, the level ends. The head itself is actually a prank from the developers because it's the head of John Romero, who was the co-founder of id Software. If you reverse the demonic sounding chant his head makes, you get this.
To win the game, you must kill me, John Romero.
Bendy and the Ink Machine art. In Chapter 1, appropriately titled Moving Pictures, if you search this workstation, there'll be an illustration of Bendy. If you move far away enough and come back, it'll be different. Fans have speculated that this is because the artist here might have used cursed ink, and thus the drawings have come alive. Harvest Moon Animal Parade Kappa. If you go to this spot in Harmonica Town and bring out the camera, you could spot a kappa lurking around in the water. In Japanese folklore, kappas are thought to be dangerous and even pulled people into the water. Pizza Tower Jump Scare. If you don't make any inputs after the intro cutscene and you just stay in the dark for about 40 seconds, this happens. Runner 2 Slenderman. On the Bushwacky level, most players were probably too focused on not hitting anything while running that they'll initially miss Slenderman in the background. He actually appears multiple times in the level too. Plants vs. Zombies Slenderman. In the original Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare, if you look towards the woods of the Zambos estate, you could spot Slenderman staring at you in the distance. Later on, when the game got updated, going back to this spot reveals that a chomper got to Slenderman and is eating him up. GTA Vice City Cement Shoes. Going to this spot on Washington Beach reveals someone in cement shoes. It's a form of body disposal that was popularized by mobs in TV shows and movies, where the feet were covered in wet cement and once it was dried, they were thrown into the water to sink. GTA Vice City Apartment 3C. If you go to this apartment building in South Ocean Beach and head up to 3C, it'll be empty. Go into the bathroom and you'll find a chainsaw and a lot of blood around. This is a reference to a scene in the movie Scarface, where a chainsaw is used for a murder in a bathroom. Metro Exodus TV. When you're on the Caspian level and you smoke from this hookah, your vision will get wobbly as you start to hallucinate, during which the TV turns on and a baby Dark One appears, which is essentially a mutated human descendant who humans have grown to fear. Lon Lon Ranch's remains. Lon Lon Ranch was a beloved spot in Ocarina of Time. However, in Breath of the Wild, it seems to be in ruins. Although it's not 100% confirmed to be the real location, it does have a striking resemblance to the original area. Gyroid Face. In the original Animal Crossing, if you were to take the train to another village that was on a second memory disk and something interrupted that trip, either the console turning off or the console reset button being pressed. Either one. When you come back into the game, one of your villagers remarks why you're here, considering that you were just traveling. They could let you back into your regular save file, but any items or cash you had on you would be lost. As you load in, you see that your character now has a gyroid face. Luckily, this is reversible. All you have to do is save the game and then come back. Although this has been mistaken as a glitch, it is actually a deliberate Easter egg put in by Nintendo to get the player to talk to their gyroid to properly save the game. Battlefield 5 Gnome. On the map Eris, if you see a garden gnome and you break it, it'll appear behind you for the rest of the game. It can't be injured. It'll just stare at you with its piercing red eyes. The only way to get it to stop is to make amends and rebuild it with the build tool. Hitman 2 Live Exorcism. If you bring a sniper rifle to the Miami map and make your way to the aquarium, you could zoom in on these mannequins up above. If you do, it changes the saying on the sign from exercise in progress to exorcism in progress. The mannequin hanging there will start to move and it'll eventually face you. Once you exit out of the zoom, it disappears and teleports right behind you. BioShock Infinite Corpses. In the second episode of the Burial at Sea DLC, when you're on the boat with the Lutesses, if you look out into the water, there will be floating corpses beside you. The source of them are somewhat debated, as there are theories that these could be the bodies of the plane crash victims from the first game, or maybe even that they're all of the other Elizabeths, as the game focuses heavily on alternate universes. Mob of the Dead jump scare. On the Black Ops 2 map Mob of the Dead, if you equip a sniper rifle and go onto the plane assembly roof, specifically at the end of the roof, and look through your scope at the fireworks in the distance, a face will pop out. I Am Not Me room. In Cyberpunk 2077, if you go into this abandoned building east of Delamain HQ and go up to the 3rd floor, you'll find that room 301's door is slightly open and there's something interesting inside, but you can't enter without a mod. The room has a bloody wrench on the floor alongside a bunch of blood and handprints. On the wall, amongst lots of scribbles, is "I did not want this. I am not me." This room isn't tied to any mission, but that hasn't stopped fans from speculating that it's from either cut content or some hidden overarching story, since there are other instances of this type of writing on walls, probably having to do with the BD addicts in game. BD standing for brain dance, a type of complete immersion technology that lets people record and play back everything that someone experiences as if it were happening to them. Arkham Asylum's Raj Al Ghul. If you head to Dr. Young's office, you'll see the body of Raj Al Ghul. However, if you come back later, he's gone. This fits in line with how he could be repeatedly resurrected, and it makes sense here because we see him make multiple appearances in later games down the line. Layers of Fear 2 Twins. Towards the end of the game, a ghost tricycle comes out of nowhere. If you go down the hallway it came from, a set of twins show up. This and the tricycle are references to the hallway scene from The Shining. Gears of War Library Reaper. In Gears of War Judgment, if you get into a free-for-all library multiplayer match and find this bookcase and push it, it slides up. Throwing 2 grenades above causes a painting to fall. When you shoot the paper that fell with it, a fire is lit. You have to then go find all the other paintings on the map and do the same thing. Once that's done and you return to the original spot, a Reaper will emerge from the frame. After it leaves, if you shoot the painting, you'll have the chance to fight it. Until Dawn Ghost. The game has a wide range of horror frights, from a slasher to Wendigos, but during the Ouija board scene, the characters are trying to communicate with their dead friend. It seems to work since a ghost could be seen in the background. However, the characters don't take notice and the ghost isn't really seen again. There's a lot going on in the game already, so this adds another spooky layer on top of everything else. The notion that the location is also haunted. Wizard 101 Void Face. If you look over to the side of the map on Mushu, before fighting the Death Oni, some faces will appear for a few seconds. They're not tied to anything in the game, and some players think they're actually the faces of the developers. Evil Within, Laura's Ghost. In the DLC, The Assignment, down in the biometrics lab, there are these doors that are repeatedly opening and closing. If you look inside, Laura's ghost gets up close to you before disappearing. Goat Simulator Moo Man. In the Payday DLC map, near the spawn is a cow pen, and in that cow pen is a man, just standing around. If you approach him, he'll start following you. Whenever you're not looking at him, he'll teleport to be near you. There's no way to interact with him, and he'll keep following until you leave the game. Just Cause 2 Lost Monster. In the game, Hantu Island is essentially a giant Lost reference, and that includes an homage to the show's smoke monster. It appears as a soldier, and although it follows you around, it doesn't attack you. You could shoot at it, but it has an incredibly high amount of health. Rainbow Six Siege Well Zombie. On the villa map, shooting this well causes something to scream out. The growls and what sounds like a die sound makes it seem like a zombie is trapped down there. Rainbow Six Siege Submarine Screaming. On the canal map, shooting at this submarine causes some screaming to happen. This was actually here prior to the map's rework, where the noises instead came from a cargo ship. Serious Sam Secret Watcher. In Serious Sam, the second encounter, if you're in the Serpent Yards level and take in this pill, a secret watcher appears. Up above, there will be a pair of eyes staring down at you. If you shoot at it, it turns into a mighty kamikaze and explodes. Security Breach Balloon Boy Game. If you take pictures of 4 mascot cutouts in the Pixaplex, this poster turns into a door. Once inside, if you go through this hole, you'll see an arcade game, Balloon World. It's a Flappy Bird style game, and as you progress through it, the sun becomes more wicked and corrupted. If you complete the whole thing, you're met with this end screen, with the glitching text reading, "Good night." Modern Warfare Giant Teddy. If you equip 2 LMGs and go into the station map, go and break all 6 of these train station decals. 5 will have numbers and the other will have a keypad. The numbers are randomized, so these steps can't be skipped. When facing the panel, shoot at each of the numbers as they appear left to right. Once that's done, a giant teddy bear with piercing red eyes drops down. You could shoot at it, but fighter jets are what takes it out. Black Ops Zombies Dairies. If you go to the Dairies map and stand by this Juggernaut station, you'll be able to hear children singing and some sort of nursery rhyme. Something also worth mentioning for this map is that when you go near this balcony, when there are no other noises at all, you could hear a woman crying. Modern Warfare 3 Gravestones. When you're on the Sanctuary map and get close to the gravestones, you could hear 3 separate voices calling out. These are the voice lines from the game's infamous Davis Family Vacation clip, right before the truck in front of them explodes. Verruckt Dentist Chair. In Call of Duty World at War, if you go to the bloody dentist chair on the Verruckt map and interact with the wheel, you get to hear a drill and the screams of a former patient. Zombie Army 4 Dolls. Throughout the game, you'll encounter multiple creepy dolls. They can't attack you, and although you could shoot at them, they bring an eerie presence just by standing there. Not to mention the fact that some of them can talk and move their arms, and even hold their heads after they've been shot off. Harvest Moon 444. In Harvest Moon Friends of Mineral Town, when the clock displays 444 and you go up to a TV, 444 will be repeatedly written out. This might not seem like something too spooky, but in Japan, the number 4 is essentially bad luck because 4 and death have the same pronunciation. In a sense, for them, it carries the same weight as the number 666. Here Lies Link. In Final Fantasy Dawn of Souls, when you go to Elfheim, a village full of elves, and you go to the gravestones, one of them reads, "Here lies Link," as in Link from Legend of Zelda. Payday Witch. In Left 4 Dead, the witch is one of the most formidable enemies as she can instant down if she's disturbed. In the Payday Mercy Hospital map, which is a location in Left 4 Dead, the witch makes an appearance in a locked closet door in a hallway. If you get close, Psychonauts Mila's Children. On the Mila's dance party level, you're essentially in Mila's mind as you learn how to levitate. But if you go into this secret room, you unlock a memory labeled Mila's Children. This is where you find out that Mila used to work at an orphanage and was passionate about her job. But one night, when she came back from getting groceries, the orphanage was on fire. She has psychic powers, so she heard the children's screams loud and clear as they all burned to death. Afterwards, if you go into this chest, you meet her memories of these children as they cry out for her. Spiritomb Wisps. In Pokemon Arceus, you meet Vesa, who asks for your help in repairing a broken seal, one that was put in place by someone with strange magic, all in an effort to contain a destructive being. In order to repair it, you need to collect 107 wisps. So once you do that and go to Vesa, they reveal that there are actually 108 wisps that are needed, and then they say, after this, the traveler who used that strange magic will finally forgive me, right? Then they ask you to close your eyes, and once you do, they're gone, and the final wisp is right there. After collecting it, a voice tells you, making you gather all those wisps was my last bit of mischief. Thanks for playing along. Please, don't forget about me. Then a Spiritomb appears. It is a Pokemon that's formed from 108 spirits, and Vesa was the last one. Vesa was trying to make amends for its destructive nature in the past and didn't want to cause any more trouble, so they asked for your help to get all the spirits contained. Sword and Shield Old Letter. In Hammerlock, there's a little girl named Paula that asks you to deliver a love letter to someone named Frank in Balanlia. Interestingly, this item is called Old Letter. Once you get there, you assume that Frank is a kid, so once you talk to this one, he tells you that Frank is his grandpa's name. When you give the letter to Frank, he tells you that Paula was the name of a girl he spent a lot of time playing with when he was younger, but she got sick and didn't tell him exactly how bad the situation was. They got into a fight over it and he moved away soon after. They haven't spoken since then. He then asks you how she is. Dear old Paula. You can either say nothing or lie to him. Either way, he'll reward you with a choice scarf. When you go back to where Paula originally was, she's gone and in her place is a Reaper cloth item. And then you hear a voice thanking you for delivering the letter. Black White Ghost Girl. On Marvelous Bridge, there's a chance for a girl to appear on it. Once you get close enough, she fades out. Then at the gate nearby, there's an old lady that talks about a girl who played with her Abra around here before the bridge was built. In the sequel games, Black 2 and White 2, there's a strange house outside of Reversal Mountain. When you go inside, that same girl appears and talks about a dark dream, and she mentions looking for her parents and her Abra. Later, in another part of the building, you pick up a Lunar Wing. That prompts her to appear. She asks you to take it to the Pokemon Cresselia. That's why she was on the bridge in the first place. But what happened to her exactly? It's theorized that she succumbed to Darkrai's Darkness spell. Darkrai is a Pokemon that is able to protect itself by making others fall asleep and experience terrible, unending nightmares. However, it can't really fully control this power and doesn't intend on hurting others. It's a self-defense mechanism that can inflict serious collateral damage. The only thing that could wake up someone in this state is Cresselia's Lunar Wings. With this context, it seems that the girl died before she could wake up, before the Lunar Wing was brought to her. And so she's been protecting it, trying to give it back to Cresselia for someone else that might need it. Chloe's Dream Journal. In the Life is Strange prequel game, Before the Storm, you play as Chloe as she deals with a whole lot of problems. Her dad's dead, her mom has moved on with someone she hates, and her former best friend moved away. During a dream sequence in episode 1, she's in a car talking with her dead father. If you go into your journal during this, the first page has a drawing of your former best friend Max hanging from a tree. And if you go to your text, you see that your mom messaged you that it's going to be okay. For me, not for you. I've got David now. You though, you don't have anyone. Max has also sent you some messages. Don't worry, I'm gonna see you real soon. when you're dead. Once again, these are in a dream sequence, so they're not actual texts she's received. This is just a peek inside of her dwindling mental state and how she feels about the people she cares about. Before the Storm reversed music. The game has hidden messages in one of its songs. The band Daughter produced the soundtrack for the game, and in the song titled I Can't Live Here Anymore, there are a number of whispers that could be heard if the audio is reversed. Outlast 2 reverse messages. There are several messages you could collect, and if you reverse the audio on certain ones, you unlock some cryptic recordings.
Dear Lord, sweet Jesus, forgive my sins and accept my gratitude. Thank you, God, for killing my child.
Doom 3 Mirror. Near the beginning of the game, if you go into this bathroom and look at the mirror, Tokyo Extreme Racer 3 Ghost. After defeating the Death Driver, who is presumed to be a ghost, you unlock his car, and when you drive it, all the vans driving beside you will have ghosts looking out at you. Silent Hill 4 Hole. If you look through this hole in the apartment, you'll see Eileen Galvin and her Robbie the Rabbit doll sitting on a bed. If you check it again after she goes to the hospital, Robbie is now facing you and pointing at you. Please don't touch anything. Is she here? In the VR version of Please Don't Touch Anything, pressing this button 16 times unlocks a hammer. Then you'll use it on the clock to break it. Once you set all 3 of the hands to 6, the screen turns static and this happens. Red Dead Redemption 2 Haunted Forest. If you go to the Roanoke Forest, you could hear some ghostly whispers.
What's that terrible noise?
He must be a sick kid looking for his mom. They've been known to fall like that.
The source of these voices can actually be found in a movie that can be watched in the game. It explains that a couple once went out into the woods and stumbled upon a ghost army of redcoats who cut the man's head off. The woman was able to get away, and when she came back to town to tell them what happened, they accused her of witchcraft for raising the dead and burned her at the stake. Arkham Knight New Game Plus intro. When you beat the game and start a New Game Plus, the intro cutscene where Joker is being cremated is pretty much the same, but the ending is a bit different. Arkham Knight Man-Bat Jump Scare. In the game, Man-Bat will eventually jump out and scare you. That's part of a side mission to capture him. If you've already completed that side mission and go to Arkham, you'll see him locked up in his human form. But if you play the game on Halloween, he shows up to jump scare you again. Going back to Arkham reveals that he managed to break out. You can't capture him again though, as he just disappears after that. Half-Life 2 Zombie Screams Reversed. The zombie screams in the game are unsettling enough already, but they're arguably even worse when they're reversed. Sonic CD sound test. On the sound test screen of the Sonic CD, if you set these values up and press start, you get taken to this screen. The text translates to Infinite Fun, Sega Enterprises, Mazine Pictures. This version with the creepy music can only be found on the American version of the game, as the Japanese and European ones came with a more upbeat song. Captain Toad Ghosts. In Captain Toad Treasure Tracker, when you're on the bizarre doors of Boo Mansion level, if you go to the back wall and stare at it around the 300 seconds mark, handprints will appear. That's not the only ghostly secret in the game either. When you're on the freight train flight level and you go to the front of the train and wait until the 312 second mark, a laughing ghost face will appear under the track. Mario 3D Land Ghosts. If you wait around at the end of any ghost house level, you'll see a ghost appear before fading out. This is the most obvious visual of it, but in reality, this ghost is in the background of the start of every single ghost house level. The Crew End of the World. If you head to the south and drive off the road here, you'll find an abandoned car. Nearby are a pair of legs sticking out of a bush. Keep on looking and there will be a newspaper that says the world is ending. This exact same Easter egg can be found in the original Crew as well. It's theorized that the man here saw this newspaper, got freaked out, and drove to this spot to off himself instead of facing the coming apocalypse. Life is Strange Neighbor. When you're in Chloe's room and you go out of bounds to the outside, you see someone just sitting there at the window. From the normal camera, there's absolutely no way to see this, so who this is and why they're there is a mystery. Arma Santa. In Arma 1 and 2, and also in DayZ, if you look through a chimney, you'll find a creepy looking Santa staring back at you. Red Dead Redemption 2 UFO. If you go to New Hanover and inside the shack, you'll find a piece of text detailing a cult savior, a voyager of time and galaxies, who will appear at the second hour under the moon. If you're there at 2 AM and go inside the building, this happens. After a while, it just leaves on its own. Hot Shots Golf 4 Flatwoods Monster. On course 5, hole 6, if you take the camera towards the edge of the course, you can see this creature in the distance. It, however, disappears once you get closer. This is the Flatwoods Monster, an alien-looking cryptid from West Virginia. Rainbow Six Siege Waco Compound. The Oregon map is based off of the infamous real-life Mount Carmel Center from the 1993 Waco siege. That was basically a 51-day standoff between feds and the Branch Davidians, a millennial Christian sect. The FBI was trying to arrest the group's leader, David Koresh, for violating federal firearm regulations, but what ended up happening was a shootout with casualties on both sides. 51 days later, the FBI set the compound on fire in an attempt to draw everyone out, but what ended up happening is 76 cult members dying inside, 25 of them children. It's regarded as one of the most controversial FBI operations ever for that reason. Mortal Kombat 9 Crypt Monster. There's a simple but effective jump scare that shows up at random when you're in the crypt, which is basically where you could spend your in-game points for characters and collectibles. Outlaws Aliens. On the first level, if you blow up the outhouse, you'll be able to go inside it. Swimming through it leads you to a weird looking area, and when you interact with this window, there'll be two aliens holding a saw above a cow. Another alien comes up to close the window. Silent Hill 2 Opening. If you turn up the brightness of the game's intro, it reveals that when James is looking at the mirror, he's actually looking straight at you. Death Stranding Shower Ghost. In Death Stranding Director's Cut, there's a chance that when you're in your room, this cutscene will start to play. Someone is in the shower. This is odd because this is your room, and you're waking up to this. But for some players, they've already woken to another character, Fragile, showering before, so they might just assume it's her again. But either way, as the cutscene goes on, you realize that something is wrong. The figure then starts to violently thrash around before stopping. This reference is actually two in one. The first is that it's a callback to the cancelled horror demo by the game's director, Hideo Kojima. PT featured a ghost called Lisa that would thrash about in the same way. The second reference is to Kojima himself. He makes an appearance in another cutscene, and from that, we get a good look at his face. Going back to the shower cutscene, if we slow it down, we could see glasses on the face, pretty much confirming that this is the Kojima model jump scaring you. Night of the Consumer's Secret Room. If you go into this storage room and break open this cracked wall, you'll find a secret room with a skeleton inside. On the wall is "Don't trust the manager" alongside a lot of scratch counters, indicating how many days the person has been there. Harvest Moon Teddy Bear. In Harvest Moon, A Wonderful Life, if you buy a teddy bear for your kid, you'll soon realize that it's alive. Every now and then, you'll get small cutscenes of the bear being up and doing something. Battlefield 4 Ghost Voices. On the map Zavod Graveyard Shift, if you go into this building and take out the light source so that it's pitch black, you'll hear this voice. If you speed it up, you'll find that the voice is actually just reading the back of the Battlefield 2 box. Roller Coaster World Haunted House. Roller Coaster World for the PS2 isn't the type of game that you think of when you think of scary games. However, the developers took a sudden turn when it came to the haunted house you could explore. In it are several long-haired, bloody-eyed ghosts floating around the dark hallways. On top of that, this is the actual background music track that's played during this. With the audio reversed, you could clearly hear a voice saying, "Satan comes soon, evil devil comes alive, you can live no more, he takes you to his old world, it cold hell." Doki Doki Literature Club, Did I Scare You? In Act 3, when you're talking to Monica while you're recording the game, she'll take notice and comment on it. She says that she is self-conscious on camera and that she'll perform a trick for you and the audience. The camera slowly zooms in on her face in anticipation for a jump scare. She's just kidding. She'll continue talking, and mid-sentence when you're caught off guard, Time Splitters 2 Game Over Screen. If you stay on the Game Over screen for a while, you'll start to hear a mysterious voice speak. As creepy as that is, there's an explanation for it. If the audio is sped up, it becomes obvious that the speaker is actually Captain Ash, a character from the game.
Now, stay right where you are, Gollum.
Gold Silver Radio. In Pokemon Gold and Silver, when you use your Pokegear radio in certain spots, you'll find some pretty chilling stations. If you're in the ruins of Alph and you set your radio to channel 13.4, this is actually the legendary Ho-Oh's cries mixed in with the unknown speaking to each other. Another creepy radio transmission happens if you tune in to channel 20.5 in Mahogany Town, Route 43, or Lake of Rage. This has to be before Team Rocket's headquarters have been cleared. Creepy Watson. In Sherlock Holmes' Nemesis, Watson doesn't have a walking animation, so he instead teleports behind you whenever you turn away. Stardew Valley Deleting Children. In the game, you're able to start a nice wholesome family and have kids, but what if you don't want your kids anymore? That's where this neat trick becomes useful. Once you unlock the Witch's Hut and you go up to the Dark Shrine of Selfishness, you could permanently delete your children from the game by turning them into doves and setting them free. On top of that, the spell makes it so that your spouse and everyone else don't remember the children at all. That's not the end of it either. After a while, you'll hear the phone ring in your home, and when you answer it, you'll get this. On Fall 26, if you go up to the TV, you'll see a mystery channel. Going to it brings up a doll on screen with text saying, "You've brought this upon yourself. Now, I'm free." The doll then teleports out of it and it gets added into your inventory. That's not all. The most interesting thing about it is how if you go back to the witch's hut, there are dolls there that will attack you. And once they're defeated, they turn into birds and fly away. If you return to the hut later, they're there again. It's theorized that these dolls, based on their name and description, are actually the spirits of other children that have been cast away and are seeking revenge. Omori Mirror. If you look at a mirror in either Headspace or Faraway Town, you'll see you and your friends, who are smiling warmly behind you. A wholesome scene on the surface. However, there's a random chance that no text will pop up and this happens instead. Finest Hour Ghost Room. In Call of Duty Finest Hour, when you're in the underground passage mission and you throw a grenade in this spot, a secret room is uncovered. There are floating candles above and pictures of kids and a cat up on the wall, amongst other things. If you go up to the empty crib, a boy suddenly appears. Interacting with him causes him to stand up and walk around. World at War Hanging Corpse. In Call of Duty World at War, on the Shinonuma map, if you throw grenades at this hanging corpse to bring it down and then walk over to it, you instantly die. That also applies to any zombies that walk over him. This is probably not intentional though. The most likely case is that since his body is in an exposed area of the roof, it acts as a barrier. So if a player ever glitched out and went up to it, which shouldn't be possible in normal gameplay, it would instantly kill them to respawn them and get them back into the game properly. Modern Warfare Demon Goats. On the livestock map, there are a bunch of hidden toys around. They come in sets, so you'll have to destroy all the toy pairings at the same time. Afterwards, going to the 2 teddy bears in the barn and destroying them at the same time causes a symbol to appear, followed by goats closing in on it. You then die once they reach the center. Manhunt 2 Jump Scare. In Manhunt 2, if you go up to the red lights district's middle window for a few seconds, the corpse of your character's dead wife shows up, appearing to be hanged. It then quickly goes back to normal. No More Room in Hell Jason Mask. On the Camp Blood map, there are multiple Jason Voorhees references, but the most startling one has to be in the attic of this building with an X on it. Once inside, you find multiple creepy things, including the iconic Jason masks, but you'll also get to see that up close and personal. Alien Isolation Early Alien. In the game, it's actually possible to have the xenomorphs show up extra early outside of cutscenes. If you take your sweet time leaving the tram, it'll get impatient and chase after you. Goat Simulator Windows Jump Scare. In the DayZ DLC parody, Goatsy, if you go into the mall's Windows store and break Windows 95, Slender the Arrival Out of Bounds. If you manage to break the boundaries of the game and glitch out to somewhere you're not supposed to be, you'll get a message saying, "Not even a bug in this game will save you from me." This was actually added in because players would break their way into these areas and Slenderman couldn't follow after them. So this was a way to punish those trying to escape him like this. Metro Janitor. In Metro Last Light's Developer Pack DLC, which is essentially just a DLC for players to mess around in, there's a strange old woman with a broom at the entrance. She stands around at first, but as you make your way around the level and turn your back on her, she'll teleport and start doing some really weird things for no reason. It's not entirely clear who she is or why she's here, but her odd presence has caught many players off guard. Little Big Planet Bloody Man. Little Big Planet is a pretty fun, kid-friendly platformer, so it comes as a shock to know that in a very early build of the game, this cutout of a bloody man is in the game files. For years, the mystery of this cutout's purpose and true origins has gone unsolved. Luckily, something new has been discovered. It was actually used in a promotional image for the game in a magazine showcasing a castle level. Half-Life 2 Playground. If you go to this empty playground in City 17, you could hear screams and the distant echoes of children playing. The file for this is called Playground Memory, and it sounds even more eerie when heard clearly. Ultima Fridge. In Ultima 9, if you open and close the fridge 8 times, several body parts will spawn inside of it. Mother 3 Deleted Boss. There's a whole deleted boss fight that features some really creepy looking imagery. It's not entirely clear why this was deleted and where it exactly fits in the story, but that hasn't stopped fans from coming up with tons of theories, including that this was cut because the age demographic for the third installment of the game was getting younger, and this would have been too much. Red Dead Redemption 2 Mass Grave. There's a mass grave in the woods of tall trees. They're all in sports uniforms and some have hoods with clown faces on them. A newspaper in town mentions that the Blackwater Athletics Club had gone missing. This is them. They're a part of a bigger side story involving a serial killer, but this scene specifically is a reference to a real-life event, the Los Maniceros Massacre, where 12 Colombian football players were kidnapped with only one surviving. Red Dead Redemption 2 Gertrude Braithwaite's Fate. The character of Gertrude Braithwaite was mentally ill and physically deformed. She became such a trouble to her family that they decided to lock her up in an outhouse. During the epilogue of the game, you could actually go visit her, but all you'll find is her remains, as it seems she starved to death. Fallout 4 UFO. In Fallout 4, you could randomly see something fly up ahead and crash. If you follow it, you'll discover a UFO. Next to it is green blood that, when tracked, leads you to a cave with an alien inside. They'll attack when spotted, but defeating them earns you a very unique gun, the Alien Blaster Pistol. Braid Metaphor. Braid is a platformer where you could reverse time to advance through levels, all to save a princess. However, there's more than meets the eye here to this story. There are 8 secret stars that can be collected throughout the game. They're so secret that they aren't tracked at all, and the game doesn't reference them in any way that would send a player to go after them. They're also incredibly well hidden, as 1 star even requires you to stay on the screen for 2 hours. For full context here, in the regular ending of the game, you find out that the level is actually in reverse and that the princess was running away from you the whole time. So once you get all of the stars and play this final level again, you're actually able to catch up to her, and when you touch her, when you get to the prologue, there's a quote from Kenneth Brainbridge, the director of the Manhattan Project's Trinity nuclear test, and at the end, there's a city on fire alongside the game's title. The princess is seen one last time as a constellation. The general consensus here is that the whole entire game is a metaphor for the atomic bomb, and how its creators wish they could go back in time to prevent its creation. That goes hand in hand with another theory that it's also a metaphor for one's own destructive drive to complete something, given how much it takes to get this ending where you finally reach the princess and now she's further than ever in the stars. Steam Music Player. Steam's native music player has given plenty of people a good scare, but not intentionally. This is because it was possible to accidentally activate it. For example, pressing spacebar on the Steam app started it up, and what it would usually play is audio files from Amnesia: The Dark Descent, because those files start with 00. So there'd be moments where someone is idle and they just hear Celeste Backwards Message. Celeste is a platformer that tackles multiple aspects of mental health in its story, but on the Mirror Temple, it takes that to a whole new level. When the music of the level in the mirror is played backwards, you hear this.
Sometimes I don't really know what's going on anymore. I don't know who I am.
This is Madeline quite literally reflecting on herself and her mind. This is also the only time a discernible voice is associated with her character. The Crew 2 Bigfoot. In The Crew 2, if you head east to Seattle, you're able to find a wandering Bigfoot. He also shows up in the same area in the original game. No More Heroes, Jean's backstory. When you finally fight Jean, she reveals her backstory to you. But first she says that it would jack up the age rating, so she says it's sped up.
I'll make it short and quick.
You are my half-brother. You know that manga called Miyuki? The Japanese one? Well, it's like that. Your father abandoned my mother.
But slowing it down reveals everything she's been through.
You are my half-brother. Your father abandoned my mother to run off with your mother. It broke her heart beyond repair. She killed herself. Knowing I had nowhere to go, he took advantage of me. Ever since I can remember, he molested me. We lived in this rotten apartment, and I was his slave. Every day I cursed his soul. I swore that I would kill him one day.
Dead Island Jason. If you go into the jungle, you could find a character named Jason who fights with a machete. He's a really strong and agile opponent, as he inflicts 7 times the usual amount of damage and can one-shot you. Also, he has a lot of health and takes a lot less damage. But if you defeat him, you could explore his creepy home and pick up a chainsaw. World at War Fire Screams. In Call of Duty World at War, whenever Japanese soldiers are lit on fire, they'll yell out Kasai for fire and Atsui Desu for hot. However, certain soldiers will yell out Api for fire and Panas for hot. They're speaking Indonesian, and this unnerving detail comes from its historical accuracy, where Indonesians were forced to fight on behalf of Japan. Far Cry 3 Jellyfish. In the game, you could kill animals in order to unlock their entry in your survival book. But when it comes to jellyfish, the only way to kill them and get their entry is to exploit a glitch that causes the sea layer to disappear. Once that happens, you could use Molotovs to kill them. If you then take a look at their entry, you'll quickly realize that it's not like any of the other animal descriptions. The screams through the night, the hot air of explosions shaking the treetops, the bodies, some faceless, they were only following orders. As odd as that is, it actually has an explanation. It's a continuation of the Seagull's entry, which is written in the same vein. Both of these are references to soldiers abandoned in the woods long after their war ended. Animal Crossing Haunted Art. In Animal Crossing New Horizons, there are a number of fake art pieces that do some weird things on their own when it starts to get dark. The graceful painting will turn her head. The scary painting will smile. The wistful painting will close her eyes, as if she were going to sleep for the night. The informative statue will increasingly glow. And finally, the ancient statue's eyes will light up and it'll float around when it's interacted with. Animal Crossing Ghost Wallpaper. In New Horizons, if you equip the graveyard wallpaper in a room and repeatedly dim the lights, a photorealistic ghost will teleport every time the lighting is changed. Animal Crossing Alien Broadcasts. On Saturdays and Sundays at 3:38 AM, if you go to the TV, there will be an alien on screen. It's speaking in gibberish as it and a UFO are displayed. This is a running Easter egg that also appears in New Leaf. Red Dead Redemption 2 Strange Man Cabin. There's a shack in Lemoyne that has a bunch of paintings and writings. As you come back again and again, the painting becomes clearer and clearer until finally, on your 4th visit, it's complete. But not just that. Taking a look in the mirror reveals a strange man behind you, but when you turn around, no one's there. Doom's Spectrogram. In 2016's Doom, the Cyber Demon track reveals some hellish imagery if played through a spectrogram. Looking closely at it reveals pentagrams and the number 666 repeating. Cuphead alternative title music. If you get the bad ending and you choose to make a deal with the devil, the song that plays at the main menu is the normal song, but in reverse. However, if you input the Konami code, you get a different version, a more demonic one. This track was previously thought to be an anti-piracy trick, or more likely, just deleted content. It doesn't stop there though, because if you run it through a spectrogram, you see various forms the devil takes in his boss fight. BioShock Infinite Hidden Music. There's a creepy creaking ambient track. But when it's sped up, Voices can be heard singing, but it's still not entirely clear what they're saying, as some have theorized it sounds like two songs jumbled on top of each other. The game's own audio directory even spoke out to reveal that this was essentially a jam session, and that he pitch shifted the song down to make it sound really distorted. Trepang 2 Backrooms. On the PC version of Trepang 2, if you activate Tmod cheats and no-clip through this blue tarp, you'll find yourself in a secret area. If you walk through it towards this white figure, there's a bomb explosion and you end up in the backrooms. There's actually quite a bit to explore here, but if you want to leave, the game won't let you. You have to go through the entire area to find your way out, which leads to a developer testing area. Paper Mario Murder. In the original Japanese version of Paper Mario, The Thousand-Year Door, there's a crime scene house in Rogueport that has a toe-shaped chalk outline alongside dried blood. Given that the Mario franchise tends to generally be very kid-friendly, it's no surprise that this was removed in the English version of the game. Black and White 2 Whispers. In the PC game Black and White, if you play it at night, there's a chance you'll randomly hear your own name. This is because the game actually looks at your PC files, and if it finds a common name, it'll remember that and whisper it to you. Black Ops 2 Moving Teddy. In Zombies mode, if you take a look at the teddy bear that's on top of the mystery box, you might see it lift its head and look around. Black Ops 3 Imposter. If you go to the Setsubu no Shima map and you look at each of these green tubes with your scope for a few seconds and then get exposed to spores, another version of your character gets spawned in. This is what happens when you go up to them. One STPAI. In the Wii's second installment of the drumming game Taiko no Tatsujin, its files included an unused song that, well, I'll just play it. Due to the mysterious nature of how hidden the song was, it led to lots of speculation on why it was left unused. But the reality of it, confirmed by a game's developer, is that it was simply just an unused song that they forgot to delete from the game. It, however, did make an appearance later on in the series' final DS installment. Soma Girlfriend's Face. Throughout the game, you don't really see your love interest's face, but when you take the camera around to take a peek at them, you'll wish you hadn't because her face is covered in maggots. This was apparently supposed to be a part of a dream sequence in the game that got cut, so the model got reused for this scene. Cry of Fear 112. If you dial 911 or 112, the American and Swedish emergency numbers, this happens. Layers of Fear Ouija board. If you play the game on Halloween, a secret door will open up in the basement and inside you'll find a Ouija board. This is connected to a special Halloween story, but there's actually a lot of words you could put in if you're curious of what the game will show you for that word. Also, to actually leave this level, you have to input escape, game, or porcelain. Fatal Frame idle screens. In the Fatal Frame games, if you become idle for long enough without pausing, the game takes advantage of that by causing some spooky effects on your screen. Mario Odyssey Disappearing Man. If you look at this corner of New Donk City, there's a man jumping and cheering at something in the distance. When you get closer to him, he completely disappears. But if you go away, he'll reappear again. It's also worth noting that if you go to City Hall, there's a woman that's just standing there while everyone else is cheering for the music. Given that, it's theorized that these two were accidentally swapped somehow. As for his vanishing act, it's likely a glitch due to how the game handles models. To sell the illusion of being in a thriving city while at the same time keeping a high frame rate, it uses low quality models when they're far away, and it swaps them to a higher quality one when up close. For some reason, this man's high quality model just doesn't show up. Saints Row 2 Screaming. If you go to this house at the end of Morningwood Cemetery, anytime between 11 PM and 4 AM, you could hear screams coming from inside of a man yelling at someone while using a saw.
You want to lose that? Yeah, you do.
Splatoon laughing statues. If you head to the statues in the Museum d'Alfonsino, you'll hear what sounds like children laughing. This is actually not even the first time these sounds were used in a Nintendo game, as they could be heard at the end of Skyward Sword's ancient automaton Coloctus boss battle. Life Stage Ghost Women. The Life Stage Virtual House is a 1993 house designer simulator for the 3DO system. It has a fairly simple premise, but it hides something unsettling underneath. If you select this cave option, you'll find a ghost woman locked up in the basement, among others. On top of that, in the Japanese version of the game, if you select the question mark on the menu, you'll be met by more of them. There will be pools of blood on the floor leading to a door, and when it's opened, you see this. Zombie Army Nightmare. In Zombie Army Trilogy, during the episode 3 chapter City of Ashes, if you go over to this marked bed and sleep, you'll enter a nightmarish sequence, and right in the middle of that is Adolf Hitler with the Saga Martha key in his chest. That's a relic that he used to bring upon the zombie apocalypse in the game. Once you take that out of him, he turns into a zombie and you wake up. Kanye Quest 3030 Cult. This is a JRPG that follows a fictional Kanye West that travels to the future, where he battles clones of rappers. But the real interesting thing happens in the alternate ending of the game. If you talk to this cultist, they'll ask you what you want to do. If you type in the word ascend, you get transported to a new world as a voice congratulates you on making it here. It says some other cryptic stuff as it directly speaks to you, the player, before leaving you to do what you want as a magical butterfly. The rest is a big ARG where you need to get your codes to advance through a QR code, and that's just the beginning. This whole thing is too big to cover in this video, so I highly suggest you look into it in your own time if you're interested. But essentially, there was a lot of speculation that the game was linked to a real-life cult, and that they would try to reach out to players who have been able to advance through the Ascension level. That the whole game was a big recruitment tool for the cult. This turned out to be false, as the game itself was actually made by an Australian artist for a high school project. Dear Esther Ghosts. In the walking simulator Dear Esther Landmark Edition, you walk through a set of designated areas as the story unfolds. As you progress, you'll be able to spot these ghosts watching you in the far off distance. They disappear before you can get close to them, and some even react to you spotting them by trying to hide. There are 6 ghosts, and given the way that they appear, it's likely that they are there to represent the characters in the story that's being told. Aquanaut's Holiday Face. Aquanaut's Holiday for the PlayStation 1 was a deep-sea exploration game where you essentially do just that. You explore the sea. That's probably terrifying enough for people that have thalassophobia, or a fear of deep bodies of water, but something that we could all agree on is that this face is unsettling and out of place here. And yet, there it was for no clear reason in the game's files. Tony Hawk Girls Picture. In Tony Hawk's Pro Skater for the N64, there's a cheat code that brings up a black and white image of a woman. It was believed that this was Erin Lee, Tony Hawk's then wife, but this has never been confirmed. There's also another picture of a different woman that's unlocked with a different cheat code. There's no official confirmation on who this is either. Interestingly enough, in the end credits under the special thanks section, someone named Ryan writes, "Linda T, I said I'd put you in a game somehow, so here we are." Tony Hawk's Underground Face. In Tony Hawk's Underground 2 Remix Edition, if you go to the Santa Cruz stage and go out of bounds in this area, there's a blurry red face just kinda hanging there. It specifically only shows up in this version of the game, which was a PlayStation Portable exclusive. Zombie Army 4 Controller Sounds. For the PlayStation 4 edition, if you pause the game and are gone for a while, your controller will start to call out for you to get back to the game. Viscera Cleanup Detail Last Supper. In the House of Horror DLC, if you go to the dining room and stare at the Last Supper painting, it'll slowly turn into something a bit more grotesque. Xbox Voices. On the original Xbox, if you were to stay idle on the main menu for long enough, these strange sounds will start to play. These were included because the premise behind the Xbox was that it was something literally out of this world. So these voices were extraterrestrial beings trying to communicate. Yuboa. In the psychological horror game Yumi Nikki, if you go to the pink sea and into this house, you'll see Poniko in the middle of the room. You can't interact with them and they don't even acknowledge you, but what you can do here is turn the lights off and on. Once you enter the house, there's a 1 in 64 chance that doing that summons Yuboa. You can't leave and are forced to go up to it. Doing so sends you to a section of white desert named Yuboa's Trap. As it sounds, you're basically trapped in this unnerving setting as the only way to wake up is either by pinching yourself or using the eye palm effect to teleport away. McDonald's Treasureland Adventure. In this game for the Sega Genesis, if you enter this specific password, this happens. This is actually a demo to show off how the system can render 3D models in real time, but that context doesn't really help all that much with this music choice. SnowRunner Eyes. If you play this off-road vehicle simulator at night and pay attention to the forest, you'll see pairs of eyes staring at you. The first thing you might think is that they belong to wild animals. That makes sense, they tend to have reflective eyes. However, they don't act like animals. They mostly stay away from you and disappear when you get up close, but not always. And when you get close enough, you could see that they don't really have bodies. They're just eyes. Law & Order CCTV picture. Law & Order 2 Double or Nothing had to be recalled from stores because this photograph in the back of this office is from real-life CCTV footage of an infamous English crime case, the kidnapping and murder of James Bulger. According to the developers, they had no idea the image had such dark origins and assumed it was just a random CCTV picture. Hall of Tortured Souls XL95. Okay, yes, Microsoft XL95 isn't exactly a video game, but just bear with me here. If you go to the 95th row and highlight all of it, then go over to column B, click on Help, and then About Excel, and finally hold Ctrl-Alt-Shift while clicking on Tech Support, a window labeled Hall of Tortured Souls will pop up. It's essentially a fancy way to show off the software's credits as you could walk around and look at your surroundings. And that's not all. If you type in XLKFA, a hidden room will appear. If you go towards it, you'll see pictures of the software's developers. Splatoon boss sounds. In both Splatoon and Splatoon 2, it's possible to hear some eerie noises if you stay idle before or after some boss fights. The exact reason for this ambiance is unknown, and when first asked about this back in 2015, the game's director hadn't even heard about this, so it's been left up to fans to theorize what the sounds may be. That maybe they're the sounds from the deep sea metro, or possibly even the ancient wails of extinct humans. Stanley Parable, Other Person. You spend the entirety of the game by yourself. There's no one else there besides the narrator. That's why it's so unnerving when you're making your way through the office and you spot someone else walking by. They're there for only this one moment, and that's by a random chance. They don't show up anywhere else. Who they are is a mystery, but players have speculated that, due to the game's repetitive nature, this is actually you. This is Stanley. All of the possible different timelines are happening at once, and you're watching yourself live through a different one. Stanley Parable, Watching Man. In the Ultra Deluxe edition of the game, which was released 9 years later, another physical person is added into the game. All they do is watch you, but only when you're getting an ending that revolves around a bucket. Final Fantasy VIII Squall Holehead. At the end of the game, during a flashback sequence, if you slow down the footage, you'll see this picture. It appears very quickly and it's easy to miss. This is Squall, the game's protagonist, but his face is missing and in its place is a void. This has led to fan speculation that he is actually dead at this point. However, the more likely symbolism here is that it represents how he's losing his mind as he's currently stuck in a void with no way to get back home. Resident Evil 7 Demo Ghost. In the demo for the game, there's a ghost girl that shows up throughout. However, she's not in the main game at all, and only appears here. Players have tried to identify her as some of the characters from the main game, but it's also likely that she's not connected to the story at all, as the demo could just be an hallucination, and that it could also not be considered canon to the main story, as Capcom might have instead just wanted to show off how the real game would play. Red Dead Redemption 2 Ghost Train. If you go to the northwest part of Lemoyne, next to these tracks at 3 AM, you'll spot a ghost train. It's actually even possible to stop it if you obstruct the path, as it acts like a real train. Red Dead Redemption 2 Ghost. If you go to the Bayou Swamp in Lemoyne during foggy weather between 9 PM and 3 AM, you can see the ghost of Agnes Dowd. She'll yell out various things, as if she were reliving her life. From these bits of dialogue, it could be pieced together that she fell in love with someone that her parents didn't like. When he got her pregnant, he left her for another woman. She was able to convince him to come back to her, but her parents couldn't forgive him for what he did. And so her dad shot him. This caused her to break, resulting in her taking her own life under the tree they used to meet at, but not before also killing her father and potentially other family members. She also only appears a maximum of 16 times, and it's also possible to kill her from a distance. Hitman 3 Hippo. In the mission Berlin Apex Predator, if you go to Hirschmuller's office and unlock his safe, there'll be a gold idol there. If you take that to the outside area and put it on this seemingly random foggy chair by a pond, it'll disappear. If you sit down on it and wait, a hippo will rise from the water and start to talk to you for a while, mostly about you and your career choice.
Don't trust anyone. Their blood is warm, but they have no soul, like you and your kind. Murderer.
Fatal Frame 3 Grudge. During Hour 6, if you walk by the staircase hallway, there's a door that's usually open. Once you step inside, it slams shut. There's no way to get out, but you'll eventually hear some groaning. Followed by ghostly images of faces and hands on the wall. Finally, someone asks you,
"Why are you running away?"
And the door opens. This is likely a reference to The Grudge, as the groaning is similar. Also, when you leave, some spooky music plays as the camera is locked into this position for a bit. Condemned Criminal Origins Mannequin Heads. When you're in Bart's department store and you come across these mannequins, this one's head will slowly rotate to face you. As you come closer to inspect them, an enemy turns the corner to attack you. Also, once they're dealt with and you walk past the mannequins again, they'll whisper out to you. Labo House Nightmare. In Nintendo's Labo House, if it's nighttime and you use a mobile to put your animal to sleep, the mobile disappears as a number of creepy things start to happen. The lamp can come alive and the painting in the back smiles as its eyes glow red. There can also be these creatures that come out to take a look. Cave 14 Spectrogram. Minecraft's cave sounds are spooky enough on their own, but Cave 14 specifically holds an eerie secret. If you run the track through a spectrogram, Portal 2 Unused Dialogue. In the game, it's revealed that GLaDOS is actually Carolyn, the former assistant to Aperture Science's CEO, Cave Johnson, who would then choose her to replace him after his death. Her essence was extracted and put into the core that would become GLaDOS. However, there were unused lines of dialogue that reveal that this promotion wasn't her choice.
Mr. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, I don't want this. I don't want this. No, listen to me. Sir, I do not want this.
Allegedly, Ellen McLean, Carolyn and GLaDOS' voice actress, cried while recording these lines, and J.K. Simmons, Cave Johnson's voice actor, flat out refused to record his side of the dialogue because of how messed up it sounded. Ben and Ed. Ben drowned. In this game, where you play as a zombie and run obstacle courses, there are multiple hidden instances where, instead of getting the usual respawn message, you get this version. This is a reference to the Zelda creepypasta Ben Drowned. The German text at the bottom translates to, "The stairs of life is like an elevator." What this means exactly in this context is a mystery. D-Day Moloch. If you go to the church in chapter 1, you'll hear demonic noises inside. If you level the church with explosives, there are 5 runes left over. Once they're set on fire in a particular order, they make a pentagram, and that causes the entity known as Moloch to appear. You could then control him and order him around. However, if you get the pattern wrong, he'll scold you and take out your army before setting his sights on you. Undertale ABC 123A. In the game's files, there's a hidden audio track. When opened up, you hear this.
Hello, have some respect and don't spoil the game. It's impossible to have mysteries nowadays.
Because of nosy people like you.
Please keep all of this between us.
If you post it online, I won't make any more secrets.
No one will be impressed.
It will be your fault.
This is likely the voice of W.D. Gaster as he speaks in chopped up audio bits like this. After this was found out, there was a patch to the game that replaces this audio file with one filled with laughter. WarioWare touched Ashley's song. On this DS game, if you physically speed up Ashley's song, you'll hear this. She's not actually saying that, as Nintendo themselves have confirmed that this is a case where speeding it up with the touchpad causes the song to skip certain parts and mash others together. What is actually being said is, "Eye of Grand, these kids so tell." A Hat in Time monster noises. If you stay in Hat Kid's room for longer than 20 minutes, there'll be some strange noises that happen. Slender the Arrival Secret Chapter. This hidden chapter is called Haunted. To access it is a long series of steps, but once that's completed and you start the game, the text reads, "I'm lost. Can you find me?" You're then put on a glitchy version of the map and you have to go and find Slender Man, during which you'll be teleported around. When you finally find him, the text will read, "I like you. I want to play a game." You're back at the main menu, and when you enter again, you're met with this message: "I will find you instead." As you're put back, you now have to hide from Slender Man, but of course, he'll eventually find you. You get teleported to the backyard that's on fire before Slender Man slowly walks towards you, and then... And if you try to start a new game after that, this'll keep on happening. Metal Gear Solid 5 PT broadcast. There are actually quite a lot of references to the PT demo in this game. The most direct one being a radio broadcast you could find on Mission 20. It's the same radio broadcast that appears in the PT demo of the murders that kicked off that story.
Found the father in his car listening to the radio.
Rabbids Coding Texture Pack. This is a kid-friendly game that teaches the fundamentals of programming, so it's surprising to see that, in the game's files, there are multiple unused bloody textures. Some of the warning labels from this texture pack appear in the game, but why the rest of this was included is a mystery. BioShock Infinite, please stand by. In the Burial at Sea Part 2 DLC, if you go into the Manta Ray Lounge, you'll find this kinetoscope on the side. Once you look into it, the screen starts to shake and rotate, all while people could be heard laughing. Then, you're spoken to.
Silence.
Ghost Recon Wildlands Lake Boy. If you head to the child hut on the far east side of the map and you use either a drone or scope, you can see a kid in the area. But if you get too close, he runs away and disappears without a trace. If you go to the small hut, there's a Bolivian legend file that could be unlocked. The boy that turned into a lake. In short, the story is about a young boy who went to help his mom do laundry in a small swamp. As he walked into the water, he disappeared. The mother and villagers searched all around, but he was never found. That same swamp that could have only been used for washing clothes was now a beautiful lake full of fish and clean water. Jam Sessions Hidden Audio. In this instrument simulator game for the Nintendo DS, players have found a seemingly random hidden message. When you strum the A6 chord and just let it play out, you hear this voice. People have speculated that the voice is saying something along the lines of, or maybe even, what did this mean and why was this included? There's actually a very clear and rational explanation to this, as one of the lead developers came forward to set the record straight. He explains that the voice heard there was actually the voice of the Japanese recording engineer. What he said exactly was Tsuki Ikimasu, which means next, as in they're moving on to the next chord. The audio was just accidentally left in. Red Dead Redemption 2 Vampire. In Southeast St. Denis, there are 5 messages on walls, each with vampiric themes. After discovering all of them, and if you go around the area south of the cathedral between 12 and 1 AM, you'll see a corpse marker on your map. If you go towards it, you'll find an actual vampire having a midnight snack. If you kill him, you can collect bat wings and a special knife. Half-Life Blue Shift Face. On the focal point chapter, if you crouch and go into this vent, you'll see this picture of one of the game's developers. It actually also appears in a less creepy setting earlier in the Insecurity chapter bathrooms. Infra Tunnel B2. You could find some clues about the Bergman Water Tunnel B2 and how people have heard strange noises coming from inside. Once you follow those strings of clues and codes, you're able to open up the tunnel. The music and ambiance suddenly stops as you enter the long pathway. You keep on walking until you see... That was Morko, an urban legend in the game and the Finnish word for boogeyman. Lyman Chained. In the 2002 online game Garfield's Scary Scavenger Hunt, if you go to the basement, you find Lyman chained up. He says that he's hungry and asks for muffins. If you feed him one, he thanks you and sends you off. If you come back later, he's gone. But he does make other appearances afterwards. California Speed Message. In this racing game for the N64, if you go to the Mojave Desert track, there's a white billboard that's easy to miss if you're focusing on the race. But if you take a good look at it, you could see what it says. Sometimes, God takes mommies and puppies away, and sometimes, just sometimes, I do. This seems so weird and out of place for the type of game this is in, but according to a developer, this was actually a placeholder texture that they forgot to replace. Stardew Valley Creature. After year 1, there's a random chance of you hearing a strange sound in the night. When you go check outside, there's a strange capsule. You could see that it has liquid and something floating inside. You could pick it up and place it wherever, but after 3 days, you'll awake to it being broken. And that's that. Nothing else can happen with it. But when you're out and about, you might notice a creature lurking around. If you go where you saw it, it's nowhere to be found. What this thing is and where it came from is still a mystery. Players have speculated that it's an alien or a science experiment, or maybe even that it's tied to Krobus, the sewer creature, due to their similar appearances. Bully domestic fight. From 8 AM to 6 PM, if you go to this alley in the tenements and mute everything except for the sound effects, you'll hear this. From the game's files, the audio tracks that are played are labeled domestic fight. Given the game's title and subject matter, it's no surprise that Rockstar would include this very small detail in the world to help highlight how rough the area is. Race with Ryan Face. This is a kid-friendly racing game based off of the hit children's YouTube channel Ryan's World. It's a standard run-of-the-mill racing game, but there's something weird in the game's files. For Ryan's in-game model face textures, there's an unused one that has crossed out eyes with blood stains on them. The mouth is also sewed shut. What lends to the eeriness here is that this is a model that's based off of a real child. Yutao no Tatari 2 Crash. In this Japanese horror RPG, if you walk between these 3 gates, you'll eventually get an error message. Soon after, your screen is full of text. That includes, "Please stop, I will kill you. Ah, you are evil and help me." Your game will then seemingly crash. You're stuck on a blank flashing screen until... The only way out is if you force close the game. This was added in so that the game itself can feel like it's cursed, and the body at the end is supposed to be the protagonist's mother. Yummer. In the Flash game SpongeBob SquarePants Saves the Day, there's a peculiar looking thing in the game sprite sheet. Nicknamed Yummer, it obviously doesn't seem like it belonged in the world of SpongeBob. It's not seen in the final game at all, but based on the fact that its sprite sheet is from the Krusty Krab and that its hands and face look like it's peeking over, it was likely supposed to be used for this spot. As it turns out, this was actually from a modeling test and used as placeholder art for something that was cut from the game. SpongeBob. In the Flash game Tidy Whitey Tumble, which was made to celebrate the show's 10th anniversary, if you look at the game's files, you'll find this unused image that was probably a placeholder. It's SpongeBob, an old meme where you would draw SpongeBob's image but take it to grotesque lengths. Nicktoons Box. In the Wii and PlayStation 2 versions of Nicktoons Attack of the Toybots, a message is hidden on Mr. Huggle's box on the Toy Factory level. Because of how it's positioned and the fact that it's upside down, it can't be seen well. But what it says is, "I'll hug you and kill you. You'll never sleep again. I'll kill your parents." And on the warning label it says, "Warning, we'll try to kill you." Sarge's Hero's Face. In Army Men, Sarge's Heroes, there's hidden pictures in the Scorch mission. If you crawl underneath here and come out the other side, there's a picture of a man with his head stitched to something else. This can actually be seen loading in as you approach the area. Shadow Tower Hanged Corpse. In From Software's Dungeon Crawler PS1 game, there is some potentially unused content in the game world itself. In the forgotten region of the human world, when the camera is positioned just right on a certain corner, there's a hanging body. However, this is the only instance of one here. It's an inaccessible area and might have only been discovered due to these screenshots coming from an emulator, where you could extend the horizontal draw distance of the game. According to old game maps, this spot is undocumented and has yet to be explained. Zombie Army 4 Portrait. During Mission 4 Chapter 3, if you go up to this painting, it'll react. Far Cry 5 Phone Call. If you go to the administrator's cabin of the Sacred Skies youth camp, you'll hear a phone ring inside. Once you break in and answer it, the The identity of the woman isn't entirely clear as the phone call isn't directly associated with any mission in the game. Far Cry 5 Static. In certain spots of the map, if you turn on the radio, you're able to receive some mysterious static. The signal is very sensitive as it grows stronger and weaker depending on which direction you travel. Players have been trying to piece together what these radio broadcasts mean as they don't have a direct correlation with any mission. Some have speculated that there is some sort of significance to them since a few locations are marked on some in-game maps. There's also the theory that, due to how the static breaks up, it's a muffled cry for help. Carn Evil Dahmer. In the arcade game Carn Evil is a picture of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer holding a bag with a head inside. The head belongs to Neil Nicastro, the executive producer of the game and the former CEO of Midway Games, who published Carn Evil. Maniac Mansion Hamster. In both the original and remastered versions, if you play as Sid or Razor, you could actually take the house's hamster and put it in the microwave. It of course will explode. When you take it to its owner, they'll get so upset at you that they kill you. Red Dead Redemption 2 Clawson's Rest. In East Grizzly's West, there's a locked lone shack. If you go inside, there's the corpses of 2 young children amongst empty food cans. In the nightstand is a letter from their mother that explains what happened. She went off to get their stolen money back and she locked them inside for their own safety. 4 days worth of food was left behind, but she planned on returning the following night. Obviously, she didn't come back. So the children died from either starvation or dehydration. Down the road to Ches Porter, there's a family living there. If you sneak around, you could hear 2 people talk about a woman that they robbed and buried somewhere. It's speculated that this was the mother of these children.
Digs her up an ass, don't you?
Game Boy Camera. When going through the menus, there's an option to run. If you select it, you'll mostly get this screen of Africa saying, "You are now crossing the equator. Jambo Nintendo." But sometimes, you might get a face such as this one, or this one, as they ask, "Who are you running from?" You could also get the rarest and creepiest "Don't be so silly" face. They were added in because the developers wanted to mess around, and so they took photos of themselves with the camera they were working on. They'd pose in seemingly funny ways and draw funny stuff on top. However, they did not seem to consider how that would look when the child user isn't expecting it to show up. Scooby-Doo Jump Scare. Scooby-Doo Escape from the Coulsonian is a 2004 children's flash game that was made to promote the second live-action Scooby-Doo movie, but it is remembered for something else. If you uncover the Egyptian casket, the music stops and some text will appear. It's very faint and small, forcing the player to come up closer to the screen in order to read it. Please, haven't much time. Someone coming. Need help before... Roblox I love you. In Roblox servers that have the Adonis admin free model, which is basically the administration system for the server, if you type in the command I love you, this video plays on repeat. A clown is up close to the camera, fixing his hair in a dark area. This is from a very old video, 2006 to be exact, that was titled Scary Dancing Clown. And after watching that, I could safely say that developers went easy on players with the part they chose for this Easter egg. Ben and Ed ARG. The Ben and Ed ARG is a whole thing that takes too long to fully cover in this video, so I'll just give a brief breakdown. There was a hidden Easter egg telling the player to go to facebook.com/BenEd. I don't know if I could show a screenshot of what it looked like back then since it had what seems like a decaying animal as the page header, but one of the posts said to beat the game as Ben. If you do that, you'll get a secret ending. Before you reach the finish line, you'll be met with this jump scare. The game crashes right after, but if you notice, there were some coordinates there. Looking it up reveals a forest in Germany. In 2016, somebody actually went to that spot and found a package that had a creepy doll photo, a bone, and a functioning iPod that had contained emails from the game's art director. The developers came forward to say that they actually outsourced that ending to someone else and were not totally aware of it and the ARG, and that they no longer have contact with the guy who was in charge of that. YouTuber Bears Gamer would then take the game's creators to another area and find another package with weird items and even weirder drawings. Afterwards, he'd go to an abandoned building nearby to find more things. Amongst some other cryptic stuff, they found a bag of bones alongside a foul smell, but they had to leave soon after as they kept hearing noises and what sounded like footsteps. During that time, the Facebook page would upload pictures related to what was being discovered publicly, such as the abandoned building. They would also go on to post more disturbing imagery, and after another package was found in France, they posted a video where someone was cutting off their own foot. Fake or not, people would report the page over that and it got taken down. At that point, the developers were done with all of this and distanced themselves from the ARG. Eventually, the page was brought back and more cryptic photos and videos were posted, including one where he seems to be pulling a hand out of a wall. All of this has led to tons of speculation on who is actually behind all of this. Is it actually the developers, or is something else going on here? As people theorize, could the end of this ARG actually lead to the location of a body? This mystery is many years old at this point, and the last update was in 2021, so for now, the only dead thing is the ARG as it's been left unresolved. Mario Kart Arcade GP photo. There are 3 unused JPEGs in the game's files. The first one is a multicolor strip, probably used to color test. The second is of some mascots from Expo 2005 in Aichi, Japan. Alright, a bit odd, but not that unusual. But then there's the last one. It's a picture from the Belslan school siege, a terrorist attack that occurred in North Ossetia, a republic of Russia. It's considered the deadliest terror attack in history as it involved 1,100 hostages and ended with 333 innocent deaths, 186 of them being children. Based on the image's data, it was modified mere days after this event. Whatever the reason for it being in the game, it's clear that it's wildly out of place given the tragic context behind it. Nun Massacre Scream. In this horror game, the nuns scream like this. There was a lot of speculation that this was actually taken from a real 911 call, where a woman named Ruth Price can be heard being attacked. There was a lot of debate online on whether or not this call was real or a hoax. It turned out to be real, but fortunately, she fought off her attacker and lived for another 14 years before she passed away from an illness. But her assailant has never been found. The audio itself has been used for emergency services training to show the mistakes the operator made. That purpose makes sense. Using it for a video game, however, is sorta questionable considering that it's real. Fortunately, that also isn't the case, as the developer has later revealed that a voice actor was brought in to recreate the screams from the 911 call. Kamataishi no Yoru 2. This Japanese game is a murder mystery sound novel. It's like a visual novel, but focusing on sound. Once you complete the game and replay it, you might stumble upon something truly bizarre. Seemingly at random, the game's background will turn into a mosaic pattern and you're asked to choose one of these 4 options. Curse, choose suffering, attention, or why do you die? It doesn't matter which you choose because the following will be random. there are 4 different types of events that could happen. For a quick second, a photograph of someone sitting at a beach can be seen. In another one, there will be black and blue waves in the background while a continuous beep plays. On this screen is seemingly nonsensical text that mentions Christ, lotion, and the repeating phrase, "There is no help for being cursed." This goes on for about a minute. Then there's one where a pulsating blue face zooms in and out as you get a whole monologue from what is revealed to be one of the game's developers. They essentially talk about their rough time making the game and how they could hear voices from the game's characters and even see their faces in real life. They were being haunted and mysteriously disappeared from the game's development team, but they were able to find their way back into the game in this form. And finally, we have the one where there's a flash of various morbidly violent imagery cycling through while a screeching sound plays. Some of the text on screen translates to, "This is that type of game," and "This too corrupts." But the most notable piece of text here is, since this is a game, the player doesn't care how many murders happen, because they're not real. The images themselves are fairly disturbing, as some, according to players, are stills taken from infamous Japanese snuff films. For each and every single one of these events, once it's over, the game will continue as normal. These cutscenes have never been addressed by the developers and will likely never know what their intentions were for these. The hidden story here remains a mystery, but I think it's safe to assume that these additions were made for the sole purpose of freaking out unsuspecting players. Half-Life 2 Trans 6. In the Half-Life 2 beta, there's an audio file named Trans 6 that was used in a training room. Allegedly, this was originally a recording from a Soviet cosmonaut trying to communicate how hot her ship was getting before it exploded. This would have been a recording from the Giudice Cordiglia brothers, 2 Italian radio operators who would eavesdrop on the Soviets. With their recordings, they lent credence to the conspiracy that the Soviets would cover up cosmonaut deaths whenever something went wrong. This specific piece of audio was then taken by Valve and heavily distorted for the game. Let's take a listen. Fortunately, this myth seemed to have been debunked. First of all, the validity of the Giudice Cordiglia recordings have come into question many times before. But for this exact audio piece, it actually comes from the CONET project, a CD set of recordings from radio stations. To be specific, it comes from the Ready Ready 15728 track.
15728.
Corpse01.mdl. In Half-Life 2, this corpse model is actually textured from a real burned corpse. The picture was taken from a medical book and was edited so that the one remaining eye on the real corpse was taken out for the game. The victim allegedly met his fate due to a run-in with the Mafia. This discovery was made about 20 years after the game's release, and players were not that surprised given how unsettling and realistic the model looked. Of course, the model has also been used in other games such as Gmod, and even the previously mentioned Dear Esther. Understandably, now knowing that the model essentially has real gore on it, a replacement mod has been made for people who don't want to see it anymore. Thank you so much for watching through to the end. If you have anything you want to add, either from what I've talked about or something new entirely, please share your knowledge down in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.